Hey guys, welcome back to Empire Prince. Today we are going to be making a Mace Windu lightsaber hilt and just wanted something cool for a display. I've always loved Mace Windu. He's one of my favorite Jedi and he's got such a cool lightsaber. Unfortunately, he has some hard paint schemes with the chrome silver for the most part, and then he has all these chrome gold accent pieces. So we'll be getting into that today and making this nice and smooth. This file is from Thingyverse. I will link the creator in the description, and all these parts are 3D printed. They are not resin printed, so we have quite a bit of sanding to do, but luckily for the most part, Mace Windu's lightsaber is pretty flat, and even the details, so shouldn't be too hard to sand, so let's get into it. Now for future lightsabers or projects like this, I would not do this step. I went straight to gluing all the parts together with some Gorilla Glue, and this just made it such a hassle to paint later, and I will not be doing this again. It did make it very easy to sand and make everything uniform, but when it came to those smaller details with chrome, gold, and black accents later, it was just more of a challenge, so I would not recommend gluing all the parts together right away. Now, unfortunately, because we are not able to mouse sand this, because of the intricate details and how tiny it is, we're gonna just have to painfully hand sand this entire thing with some 220 grit sandpaper, get it nice and roughened up, get a good smooth layer for our Bondo layer. And if you're not resin printing this, you're gonna be doing a lot of sanding, and I mean a lot of sanding. So get used to it. Your hands are gonna hurt, but that final result is gonna be so worth it, especially because we're doing chrome. We need our surface incredibly smooth and no imperfections can be left over. So be very meticulous with this hand sanding process. Once I'm done with my 220 grit sandpaper over the whole hilt, I go in with a Bondo acetone mixture, which I make a very watery consistency. This makes it a heck of a lot easier to sand down. And I just want to put it over the entire hilt, avoiding the areas where I'm going to be putting the detail pieces because you can affect fitment, and then if they don't fit and the whole thing's painted, it's going to be a lot harder to clean those areas up. So just make sure, stay away from all the detail grooves where you're going to be putting the pieces when you're doing this. After I allowed the Bondo to dry for about 2 to 5 minutes, I come in with a 400 grit sandpaper and I just wet sand all the Bondo areas. You can be pretty aggressive in this step. We're going to be doing another layer. Just make sure not to sand too aggressively because you will burn through that Bondo very fast. This stuff sands really, really easy, especially with this acetone mixture. So just be careful of that. Once I'm done wet sanding that first layer, I go one more time with the Bondo acetone mixture, just giving it that final coat to really prepare it for that filler primer and make sure all those deeper imperfections are filled in. Once I wet sanded that second layer of Bondo with some 400 grit sandpaper, I come in with some Rust-Oleum filler primer. I don't like the 2-in-1, it's too thick and it really gums up your sandpaper, so just get the normal filler primer. It's a lot easier to sand and dries a lot quicker in my opinion. Once that first layer of filler primer is dried, we come in again with some more 400 grit sandpaper and just wet sand the entire hilt. There's going to be a lot of rinse and repeating for this one. A lot of sanding needs to be done to get that smooth finish, so just take your time with this. Same thing with the detail pieces. We're going to wet sand it with some 400 grit sandpaper once that filler primer is dried, and just make sure to really sand the edges of these pieces because this will allow for really good fitment later in the build. Now this is where I encounter my first setback. Unfortunately, I had dropped the hilt, or it had fallen when I was painting the filler primer on and caused a weird texture because the paint had been very wet and tacky and it imprinted where it had fallen. So we are going to have to fix that. Luckily, with some 400 grit sandpaper and just wet sanding, this can easily be removed. It's not too big of a deal, but if I would have not glued the hilt together at the start, this would have been much easier to paint and have all the pieces separate. So For future builds, I will be leaving the lightsaber separate until I am done with the painting. After that minor setback, I move on to wet sanding at 1000 grit sandpaper, just taking my time to really get it nice and smooth. We're not so much removing material here, we're more so polishing it up to give that nice smooth layer for our base coat of paint. Now when you're doing a chrome finish, you want a very glossy, reflective, smooth surface. You don't want any imperfections in your clear coat because that will hinder any reflections or shininess from your chrome. You can use black or gray. I think if I were to do this project again, I would use gray. I think it provides more of a brighter silver finish, whereas if you use black, you get more of that shiny steel surface, in my opinion. And then once that first layer of black has dried, I come in with some 1500 grit sandpaper and just wet sand the entirety of that base coat, because when I lay one more layer of black over it, it's going to be very smooth and not have any imperfections, and that clear coat's going to have a very nice base coat to lay over, preventing any orange peel or ripples in the clear coat. Now after your wet sand, do one more layer of either flat black or flat gray paint. Just take your time, don't go too heavy on the paint here, because if you get any imperfections at this point or any drips, you're going to have a lot more sanding to do. Now I did have a setback when I was painting. I did knock into these pieces, but I knew with weathering or paint later, I might be able to cover it up, so I wasn't too concerned, and I just moved on to the clear coat. Now for the clear coat I'm just using some Duplicolor 1K Clear. This stuff is great. If you do the proper prep work, you can get a really glass-like finish. I just do one coat every 10 minutes, with my first coat being a dust coat and then my next two coats being very heavy. You can do more coats if necessary. For the chrome I'm using, it's from the Digital Armory. It's called Duralumin. This stuff is so amazing. It's great, it's easy to use, and it's very affordable. The bottle I'm using is about $20, way more affordable than Alumoluster. This stuff you do need an airbrush for. It doesn't matter what type of airbrush, but you do need one in order to spray it on. I do dust coats. You have to do very, very light coats with this stuff, because if you go too heavy, you will dull out that reflective surface and it will just more look like a shiny gray or a shiny silver. So just make sure, do very light coats. I think for this project, I did 8 or 9 coats. This is me later in the dusting process. Just go very light, very careful, because at this point, if you get any imperfections, there's no going back. You're gonna have to sand this whole thing down. Now to get the gold chrome finish on those detail parts, I used an acrylic ink from Liquitex. I got the transparent yellow orange. Getting the transparent acrylic inks allows their reflectivity from the chrome to shine through, which means you can pretty much tint the chrome to any color you want as long as you get the transparent version. I will say I wish I would have gotten a more yellow acrylic ink, because this almost had a bronze color rather than a gold, and in some lightings even had like a greenish tint, and I wasn't super happy with it, but it still got the gold chrome across in certain lightings, and in a rush to get this video out, I pushed forward. Now in a rush to get this video out, I did not record myself painting the matte black accents which go on the detail areas, but I just glued those in with some Gorilla Glue, and then once that was all clicked in, this lightsaber was all ready to be shown off. If you've made it this far in the video, thanks so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, it really helps the channel grow. Got new videos coming out every week, so stay tuned. Thanks again, and I'll see you in the next one.